All right, welcome back to the show. It is episode 12, January 19th, Monday. This is helping me learn what day it is by doing this, what day of the month, day of the week. And yeah, all right, so I think I've got kind of a good thing together for the show today. I think, hang on one sec here. Yeah, sometimes the camera does something weird when I first turn it on, and I thought maybe I didn't purge it of that issue before starting the stream, but I think it's fine. If it is really messed up, let me know because I can fix it. All right. Anyway, and before we get into it, I was doing my vocal warm-ups and I found just like a really crazy, by accident, I just open up and read a random one here and there. Like this book it's really random what you wind up with. Like there's a paragraph from the Declaration of Independence, and then there's this verse. And I might put this verse in the description because I think everyone should try to say it. Everyone should try to say it like 3 times fast or something because it is just insane. And it is attributed to Anonymous. So, amidst the mists and coldest frosts, with stoutest wrists and loudest boasts, he thrusts his fists against the posts and still insists he sees the ghosts. That is really hard to say. So try it out. All right, and hello everyone in the chat. Nice to see everybody talking to each other. Nice. There's a zine fair someone is organizing in New York at Life World on February 14th, 2 to 7. So check that out. All right. So yeah, I didn't feel very good today when I woke up, and I still don't feel particularly good. But I think out of that, I have something to talk about. So like a couple hours ago, I sat at my typewriter and was just like, I need to get out whatever it is that I'm thinking about and also prepare something for the show. So this isn't exactly like reading my diary or anything because I was not expecting to read this on the show until like pretty close to the end, where I'm like, maybe I can just read this and reflect on it as I read it, because it's a helpful guide for revisiting what I was thinking and feeling today. But yeah, I just I don't know. And the title on the stream right now is Navigating the Zone, because that is a reference to Stalker by Tarkovsky, which I brought up on Friday. And if anyone watched it, let me know. I did not watch it, and now I wish I did, because in the process of writing this, I found an interesting. I modified. I don't know if I modified my interpretation, but I'm getting something new out of that movie again that I've seen many times, but not recently. And yeah, so I wound up kind of thinking about how I felt earlier today in terms of navigating the zone, and I'll explain what that means in the context of Stalker. And then there's 3 short things I want to read, a couple things from Society of the Spectacle, one thing from the Tao Te Ching, which is quoted in Stalker, and then also one thing from this book my friend made for me, or she printed this for me, and it's called Unseen Warfare, and it was by Scupoli, I think in the 1600s, Lorenzo Scupoli, but then it was edited, so that's an Italian Catholic, and then it was edited by Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain in Greece, an Orthodox Greek. I don't know if he was a priest or what. And then it was revised by Theophan the Recluse, I think like 100 years later. Maybe each of those happens like 100 years later. I don't know the timeline, but and Theophan was Russian Orthodox. And then the Russian version of this book, like there's English translations of what Scupoli wrote, but this is an English translation of the one that went through the Greek and then through the Russian and then came back. So it's kind of an interesting way of viewing this consequences of the schism of the church, or understanding the schism of the church too, because it moves through all of it. But anyway, I'm just reading the introduction, which is like 70 pages, and it was so it's like one of those things where you're reading it and you're like, I was just like exclaiming out loud to myself, because I was like, how could this be so relevant to what we talk about on the show, which is the stuff that I'm thinking about. So yeah, I guess I'll just read this little thing, or maybe I'll preface it with the two quotes from Society of the Spectacle by Guy Debord. And one is just right in the beginning, so if you've ever tried to read this book, it might just be familiar. So really I want to read paragraph 2, but I'll read paragraph 1 since it's right there. The book is written, like every paragraph is numbered, or not every paragraph, but it's organized into theses. So some of them might be multiple paragraphs, but yeah, so thesis number 2 and thesis number 1. So the whole life of those societies in which modern conditions of production prevail presents itself as an immense accumulation of spectacles. All that was once directly lived has become mere representation. And this is written in the late 60s. And he's deterning Marx there, because I don't know if it's the first line of Capital or something, or just a line of Capital, but the whole life of those societies in which modern conditions of production prevail presents itself as an immense accumulation of commodities. I think that's the Capital quote. Anyway, next thesis. Images detached from every aspect of life merge into a common stream, and the former unity of life is lost forever. Apprehended in a partial way, reality unfolds in a new generality as a pseudo-world apart, solely as an object of contemplation, as opposed to an object of living, an object of your actual experience and action in the world. It's a pseudo-world set apart for contemplation. So the tendency toward the specialization of images of the world finds its highest expression in the world of the autonomous image, where deceit deceives itself. And that has... This book, you really just have to read this book, especially the way our interactions with images have evolved in the 21st century, where now we literally have an autonomous stream of images, and like deceit deceives itself can be interpreted with respect to, I mean, lots of things, but now with how advanced, how realistic AI images are, like images truly made from not captured in the world, just generated, computer generated images. Yeah, I think there's a lot to reflect on there, and we'll get to it eventually on the show, but everyone should really read this. Anyway, then here's the sentence that I actually wanted to get to. The spectacle in its generality is a concrete inversion of life, and as such, the autonomous movement of non-life. So I think about that all the time, the concrete inversion of life and the autonomous movement of non-life, or the autonomous movement of the non-living, as other people have translated it. And because that is just what it feels like to live in this world. It feels like the whole world is adapting in this way that requires and expects you to conform to a regimentation that is anti-life. It's like representational, contemplative, in the sense of like it is abstract and distant from lived reality, not in the sense that it requires like advanced contemplation or something. Yeah, excellent book. And actually, I think there was another quote in here that will be relevant. Yeah, so this is number 30. All right, yes. And this is kind of how I felt today. The spectator's alienation from and submission to the contemplated object, which is the outcome of his unthinking activity, works like this. The more he contemplates, the less he lives. The more readily he recognizes his own needs in the images of need proposed by the dominant system, the less he understands his own existence and his own desires. The spectacle's externality with respect to the acting subject is demonstrated by the fact that the individual's own gestures are no longer his own, but rather those of someone else who represents them to him. The spectator feels at home nowhere, for the spectacle is everywhere. Yeah, I mean, that just kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying. And one more from here. This is 158. The spectacle, being the reigning social organization of a paralyzed history, of a paralyzed memory, of an abandonment of any history founded in historical time, is in effect a false consciousness of time. And I think there's like a false consciousness of everything. I think people really are so ungrounded from their own existence, from their own epistemological assumptions, from what they even believe is really in the world, or what it would mean that they really believe that is really in the world. I think people are like totally out there. And paralyzed history, paralyzed memory, he's not saying that history is not moving forward, but he elaborates on that 20 years later in the comments on this. And so I don't know, I want to focus on the paralyzed memory especially. Hang on one sec. Because when you are so ungrounded, your memory can't function. You're functionally amnesiac with respect to history, and also with respect to your own development as a person in many ways, because the subtleties of the things that are influencing you to be who you are, like in that first quote, the way that, or sorry, maybe it was the second quote, like you are seeing that which is represented, and that is becoming you. That process is so intense and is happening over the course of our entire lives, and so few people have any literacy with respect to that. They aren't able to see the evidence in the world and make sense of it or convey that to other people. So yeah, so anyway, I was just I guess I was just feeling a little, I wasn't feeling crazy this morning, but sometimes it does just make you feel crazy, because it's just like a total nightmare what's going on. And it really doesn't have to be, and also like everyone is, and I don't literally mean everyone, but it's like people are just going on with their lives like it doesn't matter. And that's crazy. So I'll read this little thing I've got here. And then I'll read the slightly longer thing from Unseen Warfare, and then it's a wrap. So, all right. So yeah, like I said, this isn't like, I'm not reading my diary. I probably will read excerpts from my diary, especially when we're talking about depression, like things I wrote years and years ago, because I think it will be helpful. And yeah, I think it will be helpful because some of the states of mind that we encounter over the course of our lives, especially when we're in, like, I avoid the term mental illness really, but say we're in a period of mental illness, like or even a fever, like the intensity of the images you may see in waking fever dreams, it's like, I think that just gets lost on people, because then we start living in the world of 2D screen images. And the point I'm trying to make is that actual reality as it unfolds in the consciousness, I think, is a lot weirder than anyone is willing to admit. And that just has to be demonstrated. So I'm willing to show some of the weirdness of what has occurred in my consciousness. I mean, it's like psychedelic type stuff, and not on psychedelics, just like in depressed states, or in whatever state it might be. So, but for now, all right, I'll just read my silly little thing here. I said, I don't feel great, but in this, well, I'm kind of modifying it as I'm reading it. Sorry, but I know there's certain things that I phrased incorrectly, like as I was writing them, and it's a typewriter, so you're just like stuck with it. So anyway, I don't feel great in this state of mind. However, it is more understandable, that concept I've been talking about here, that our potential is always shifting. The inclinations and possibilities change with us. What seems possible, what seems at all, is subject to the whims of experience. So that's like what we've been talking about, where the world itself and how you understand it depends a great deal upon how you've been living in the recent past and in the distant past, and how the world has been unfolding around you. It has a lot to do with that. And for example, times that came up recently where we were talking about my friend who's been reading every day for a while, and then he started memorizing poetry. And he was just like, wow, this is actually opening up my mind in ways that I never thought it could. And not simply because of, not in an informational way. It's not that he's reading information he didn't know about, although that is also happening. He's increasing the informational knowledge he has, but it is changing the way that his brain operates. It's changing the way that his being operates, so that he is actually, that's what I mean when I talk about enriching your experience. You can actually become more capable of grasping more, of being more creative or imaginative, or able to reflect, or able to hold ideas in the mind. And likewise, there's a flip side to that, where if you receive all of your ideas and information through the phone and images through the phone, and you unquestioningly let that massage you basically into an unrecognizable shape, eventually you may be more incapable, sort of more mentally incapable. That's how it's going. And there's a huge turn in our society toward creating really incapable and impotent people who are not able to think critically, not able to, oh man, there's I don't know, sorry, I thought of an example of that recently, but it's a little too, I don't want to share it because maybe this person would know what I'm talking about. But just sorts of things where people are trusting their phones more than their senses. Like the phone is presenting something to them and they're talking to an expert on the subject or something, to use that word that I also don't like, expert. But yes, and they'll be like, hang on a second, this isn't like, there's so much trust placed in the phone when you let it lead you along for so long. It increases the trust, and it disables your ability to not trust, to trust yourself, to question. So anyway, moving on. And so I've fallen back into a hole. There's millions of holes, some nearly identical, but they are never the same. The circumstances change, you change. Tricks you learned to get out may be of no use in this new hole that you've fallen into. And what I mean by that is, like, there's lots of strategies that I could give someone a list of strategies that could help them deal with depression based on my own experience with that. But they don't always work. Everything is always particular. It's always unique and singular as we go through our entire lives. Like, we're changing, everything is changing. And so the really important thing is to be able to adapt, to figure out in general how to kind of move out of these holes. And I'll move on because I get into that. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I have to stop here anyway because I'm about to reference Stalker, the film, and I have to give a little bit of context for that. And I will answer your questions at the end because I do have something to say about that, but I just want to get through this here. So, so in Stalker... Okay, quick plot summary of Stalker, because I think it actually is it's a useful analogy. So So it takes place in Russia, more or less, and there is a zone that no one is allowed to go into. I guess an asteroid landed there, and supernatural phenomena happen when you go in there, so it's totally barred off. The authorities are afraid to go in there. Nobody goes in there. And then there's a group of people in the society, and it's an impoverished, rundown, authoritarian society. And these people find ways to sneak into the zone, and they've sort of learned how to live in there, even though it is dangerous and it's unpredictable, and it kills people, it destroys people, it terrorizes people psychologically. It's sort of unclear. A lot of questions are unanswered about what it's like to be in the zone, and it is left to the imagination. And so those people are called stalkers. The movie's not about a stalker, like in that sense. It's about a specific stalker who has learned how to navigate the zone. And the other thing about the zone, why some people might want to go in there, is that there is a room within the zone where if you go in there and you do sort of a meditation, your deepest wish will be granted, essentially, and you don't get to determine what that wish is. It is just linked with your being and with your heart. So you could go in really wanting one thing, and you could get something quite different. All right, so the stalkers, they have like a side hustle, basically, or maybe it's their whole hustle, where they will take in exchange for money, they will bring people into the zone to bring them to the room, because no one, even if you have a map, if you go in there, you'll probably die without getting to that room. You need someone who's able to like sense how the zone is operating in this supernatural manner. All right. So the story follows two individuals who hire the stalker to bring them to the room. And much of the movie is spent with them trying to get from where their rail car leaves them to the room. And in the process of doing this, it's not like the stalker says, it's not a straight path, like it's that way, but we have to go this way. And they'll intersect on their own path. They'll do various things. They get separated at one point, and then they wind up back in the same area. And very little is moving. It's more happening psychologically. They are moving through the zone, but it's not like there's like actual, you witness no actual physical booby traps, and yet they seem to be increasingly scarred, some of them, in ways where they are clearly undergoing something, like when they go through this tunnel or when they wind up in another room. So anyway, so while I was writing that thing about landing in holes and like needing to ultimately be able to get out of them, I was like, this actually, well, yeah, what did I say? I said, it reminds me of Stalker once again and navigating the zone. The Stalker can bring you there and back safely, although there's no certainty even for him. And in the process, he offers you what your heart wants the most. And also in Stalker, there's that Tao Te Ching verse again that I've read on here once or twice, which is, this is quoted in Stalker by the stalker while everyone else is sleeping. He sort of has several monologues where he's just praying, I think. And he says, in life, man is soft and tender. In death, he is rigid and hard. In life, plants and trees are soft and pliant. In death, they are withered and tough. Thus, rigidity and hardness are companions of death. Softness and tenderness are companions of life. That is why the soldier who trusts only in strength does not conquer. The tree that relies on its strength invites the axe. Great strength dwells below. Softness and tenderness dwell above. And that reminds me, so to start making our way back to the society that we live in, from the society that the stalker lives in, or from the zone specifically, imagine a stalker trying to give instructions to someone to go get to the room. There's no actual procedure for doing that. You can give all of these rules, you can try to make it informational or quantifiable, but in reality, you have to go there and you have to sense it and you have to understand it and you have to trust yourself and what is happening in order to get around. And that's something I think about with the In life, man is soft and tender. In death, he is rigid and hard. I think sort of as the informational attitude toward knowledge as being rigid and hard. It's a spreadsheet. It's an artifice. And actual life and knowledge requires it's more continuous, it's more of a process than a procedure. And I'll elaborate on that later, I think. I guess I don't actually. So when I say a process versus a procedure is like a list of steps. It's like an algorithm. And algorithms can have variation. They can change themselves in certain ways. But ultimately, when it is all being executed, it is being executed deterministically. It knows what the CPU knows what the next step is going to be before it does it. So by process, I'm referring to something more multiplicative, more continuous, a little more unknowable. And anyway, so I'll just move on. So yeah, I said there's that Tao Te Ching verse again, followers of life and followers of death, rigidity and adaptability. I know that if all goes as usual, I will exit this state of mind. And that reminds me of the "this too shall pass" legend, or like a king asks for a ring that will make him happy when he's sad and sad when he's happy. And he's given a ring that says "this too shall pass." What bothers me is that the social culture that continues to be developed by us antagonizes those who would like to move along, never dwelling too long in the holes. It antagonizes those who would like to find out what's in our heart, or who would like to purify our hearts, which would require that adaptability as opposed to rigidity. And so what could come naturally must now be done in isolation. And that refers to last stream I talked about. I don't know if this is an annoying format where I'm like, I'm reading and then I'm commentating on it incessantly. Let me know. But last week, I quoted an essay, an introduction to a different translation of the Tao Te Ching, and it was talking about how we've become so distorted from our natural being that in order to act naturally is actually a very difficult, subtle, and active process. It's basically it is the most difficult thing in the world. And so that's what I mean when I say what could come naturally, what could and did in the past, maybe before the fall, so to speak, like what could come naturally must now be done in isolation. That means I must, on my own, in my own self, be able to resist and convert the regimentation from without. On my own, with my own will, I must choose to live, as opposed to be a participant in the autonomous movement of the non-living, as Guy Debord describes, to go along with things at the procedural level, at the contemplative level, separate from life. So this decade may prove to house the actual many-dimensional inflection point. That's just a way that I think about things in my head. This may be where life turns fully inside out. The bifurcation is not simply enriching the mind versus stripping the mind. Those having their minds stripped are those who learn to love the abstraction. I think of this as a trauma response. Unable to grasp the world, they become attached to a narrative ecosystem that corresponds to the life they were raised to live, where food is an eternally available commodity, sleep is dreamless, the news conveys political reality, democracy is real, political theory is reduced to slogans, love is love, a meaningless tautology, sickness is something you get and the doctors take it away, life begins and ends in the hospital, etc., etc. And so, for those of us who see the superficiality of that, for those of us who have glimpsed and hung on to that glimpse of the significance of life, I notice that it's like we are relearning how to live. I see this in so many of my friends as we get older and recognize how wrong we were really raised. And I don't mean by our parents, or I'm not putting the responsibility on our parents. This is a many generational process. And I do think we can break it as individuals. Individual parents could, in theory, break it, but the conditioning is deep. So anyway, yeah, so like like I feel like I'm relearning how to breathe. I think I'm a very shallow breather. I've never been like done a lot of like cardio exercise, which is maybe a way that I would have developed that. I mean, I would run around as a kid, but like, then as I'm in high school and then through my 20s, I don't do a whole lot of that. And so I think I breathe shallowly. I notice things about the way that I walk and the way that I hold myself, the way that my posture has formed. I noticed a lot of things in my mid 20s where I'm like, actually, like I walk like duck footed, like I kind of have my feet separate, and I mostly have kind of corrected that, I think. And but what that amounts to is like relearning how to walk in your 20s, and like, or how to have like proper posture. And it's not just things about the body, although we could go on about the body and think about the digestive process and like what nutrients we actually need. And I would separate these into two things. I think a lot about how I think we're kind of alienated from the process. I mean, we're very alienated from the process of receiving food, but I think we're even alienated from the process of consuming food. Like, I think chewing is kind of like, I don't know. It's almost like it seems like we don't have to do it as much as we have to. Like, imagine like Animal Man chewing something. I would think he would be almost like a ruminant, like a cow or something, where it's like you're trying to get every nutrient out of that. And yet our food has decreased in nutrition, and it's become more abstract, and there's become an abundance of it, so we don't even reflect on it when we are eating it. And so over time in our culture, you just like scarf down your food and think and you're digesting it properly, when really that's not how our digestive system was meant to process things, as I understand it. Anyway, but we can move on into realms of our culture as well. And a direct connection would be knowing how to cook. I know so many people who are the tradition's been broken of families teaching families how to cook, and then a lot of us just have to learn it on our own from informational sources on the internet, say. And anyway, how to use our language, how to really read books, how to read poetry, how to get lots of meaning out of it, how to understand what the author meant when they were writing the book, how to use language in our communication, how to read the subtleties of what someone is saying to you, read certain things on their face. We're becoming increasingly autistic, apparently, and I think some of that is just cope for people who are not actually autistic and are just trying to understand why, like, they can't read facial expressions or posture or whatever. It's like, I don't know if it is a physiological or genetic condition. I think our whole culture is like desensitizing us to those things that naturally we could be picking up on, but no one is expecting you to pick up on them. And it's almost like there's an agreement to silence on there's a word I'm looking for, but just like, it's like, don't ask, don't tell about having meaning behind your words. It's like, I don't know. And then for just like the actual activities of our society, culturally and technologically, like obviously some people know how cars work. Again, that's not, like when I say everybody, I don't know. I don't need to correct that every time, but people don't know how cars work. They don't know where their food comes from. They don't know how computers work. They don't know how the algorithms work. They don't know who the wealthiest people in the world are. They don't know how the political system works. They don't know where corruption is rampant in their society. Blah 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 blah. Like there's just a total like disconnect from everything. So we did a from the bottom, from the physiological body to concepts in the mind, to language, all the way up to our conception of what's happening in political reality. All right. So moving on, there's just a little bit more of this. I will also bring around the concept of prayer too, because last week we were talking about how like people acknowledge superficially that meditation and prayer exist without really probing them very much. Or like knowing how to I don't know. I feel like there's kind of a cultural norm where it's like, but what is that? At least in the most secularized parts of our society. And then some religious parts of our society have an opposite issue, an opposite alienation from the concept. But anyway, just another example. Yeah, so okay, yeah, and so all of that I just described is at the individual level. I'm not even talking about, like, that's an individual comprehending society. It's an individual comprehending anatomy. It's an individual comprehending language. And yet we're trying to create functional societies, functional families, a functional nation. And like, if the individuals are that fucked up, how are you ever gonna, like, where are you headed? So that's also an ultimate kind of theme to this whole show is like, I think the power, well, I think I might say this here. I don't know. Well, I'll just read it. And that's all largely at the individual level. We need to have functional families and communities, and if we're going to make it out of the century, there needs to be a way to cooperate vitally at the levels of large organizations, culminating in the nation. I worry about total domination, slavery, and control. Your number one defense for yourself and everything you care about on the planet is your individual heart, mind, and soul, because that's where your action will come from. So, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Anyway, like, subscribe, like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel. That's my typewriter screed of the day. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're all born in the midst of this. This is something that's been going on for centuries, in a sense. But at least, I mean, certainly for generations. This has really been going on for generations. And we need to, like, you have to put your foot down and be like, I don't want to live like this. I don't want the people I love to live like this. I don't want people I care about to be living like this. And you have to think strategically about how to make that happen. Because while technology plays a significant role in our doom, it also, like, I don't know, like, last week I started organizing my notes using Obsidian, and I have like piles and piles of papers that are really hard for me to go through and analyze. I basically don't want to read them because there's just so many of them. It seems like an insurmountable task, and I don't have a good way to organize it when I'm reading them. So I'm kind of like, what's the point? Like, I just highlight a bunch of stuff that's good, and then what do I do with the highlighted bits? Anyway, I started using Obsidian, free software, and out of the box had a really useful graphical utility. And it is like, it completely alleviated my dread about going through hundreds of pages of notes, because I can just add them in there. The graphical utility is helpful for understanding like where the gravity falls among the concepts, like things like communication show up, or control, or alienation, and then that links all of my notes together in a way where I can process them into more simplified things and create work out of that. So anyway, it's just to say, like, I don't think we should be hopeless at all. Like, we're in a very novel technological moment, totally novel moment all around. And like, if you start thinking strategically and seriously about caring about life, I think you'll be fine. But it's not easy, and we need to work together. Let me read this question real quick. Do you think we are all behaving in a group psychosis as a social contract for modern life to happen? It's beneficial. It's encouraged to be deluded and out of touch with reality. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is, like, it all goes, I don't know. I mean, there, like, some of it goes hand in hand, and some of it goes hand in glove too, where it's like like people have made the world this way. Like it's not. I don't subscribe to the idea that technology made us do this. I think there's like a lot of I don't know, two books on my list soon are so two books I would like to read that are about this, and if you're interested in this, I recommend checking them out. Although, I mean, I've only read bits of this one. I have not read this one yet. This is Century of Spin by David Miller and William Denan, How Public Relations Became the Cutting Edge of Corporate Power. And public relations is like the term, I think Edward Bernays coined it, or at least was one of the first public relations officials, and he wrote this book, Propaganda: the Public Mind in the Making. And I've read bits of this one, and it is, I mean, it's just insane. I mean, to show you the first paragraph, like, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. And he's not like, this guy's not like a conspiracy theorist. He was like a public intellectual and like government official, and you can look up interviews with him and all that. Anyway, but I do think it amounts to like a type of group psychosis for sure. Like I think people are like out to lunch. Like I think most people are, and I think it's about to get like a million times worse. I think people are, and that's kind of this, I don't know. That's the gravity of what we're dealing with, is like if you've got friends and family you really care about who are like just getting fucked up by this stuff, it is just going to get so much worse in the coming decade, I think, with AI technology's involvement in this and just the way the world is going in general. Anyway, and we can be specific about that another time. Someone else says, a visual that pops in my mind whenever I think about this is a waterfall. We're constantly in flux, and it feels like we're both the pebbles and the water and the cliff, changing, eroding, calcifying. Feels both overwhelming and meditative. Yeah, I can kind of imagine what you mean, but it's not like clicking in my mind exactly. But I do think about water whenever I think about process and change. It's pretty hard to avoid the water. Yeah, and the main way I think about water analogies too is like, just feel like I think of us as being in this like immense rainstorm, and it's like we have to traverse the rainstorm without getting wet. And it's like, it's not even, this feels like one of those like ancient Chinese like concepts. It's just like because it's not a matter of like wearing the right raincoat. It's like a matter of style. It's like, it's a way, it's a Tao. It's like you need to prepare yourself to go through the rainstorm and not get wet and get out when it clears up. All right, so I'll just read one more thing because it was awesome. That, or I could read it tomorrow, but I don't know. Let me see who's people watching this. Oh yeah, nice. Thanks everybody. If you haven't, subscribe, because I'm almost at 100 subscribers. 3 more people, and then off to the next milestone or whatever. All right, so this, I described it earlier, but yeah. Was originally a Catholic book from the 1600s. Then it was translated by a Greek Orthodox man, and then another century later by a Russian Orthodox man, and now it's been translated into English, and I'm just going to read something from the beginning, from the introduction, I mean. And he just gives a short summary of the Christian ascetic theology, or the spiritual teaching of the Desert Fathers, I think. But anyway, the first paragraph is immediately relevant to what I was just talking about. The goal of the Christian discipline is union with God by loving contemplation. And again, contemplation has many meanings. There's another one in a Heidegger essay I like about on thinking or something. And there's good contemplation and there's bad contemplation. Debord is often invoking it in a negative sense. So here in this context, though, we're using it in the positive sense, in the rich mind, the rich inner world sense. So, hey, Evan. All right. So, the goal of the Christian discipline is union with God by loving contemplation. This is the kingdom of God, and this is eternal life. For this we were created, but from this we have fallen. Our minds are distracted and fascinated by created things. Our wills are held in bondage to finite and transient goods. The purpose of our discipline is therefore to turn the mind and will back into their proper alignment, so that they may receive in full measure the illumination of divine grace. This is a huge theme on the show, but not typically in this context. I'm not as familiar with Christian texts as the Tao Te Ching I've been reading for years, and the Quran I was reading for a few years as well. So, yeah, they cannot do so while they are inordinately attached to the creatures. It is the pure in heart who shall see God, and therefore the immediate aim of our discipline must be to attain to purity of heart. This is what Abbot Moses explained to Cassian, quote, "The goal of our profession is the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, but our immediate aim or target is purity of heart, without which it is impossible for anyone to reach that goal," unquote. The way which leads to the goal can be considered under three aspects. 1. It is a moral way, a discipline of the will and character, and this has naturally two sides, a purgation of what is evil and a cultivation of what is good. And that is, I was exclaiming out loud to myself while reading this, because I was like, that's exactly what I was saying on the show a week ago in one of the episodes, because I was talking about the bifurcation of people over the course of the decade, where some people are just totally atrophying their minds, and we want to be on the other side of that. And that has two aspects. You have to fast from the things that are destroying your mind. You have to have some control over the phones, separate yourself from them, separate yourself from chaotic thought, influence, all of this. And then you also have to be honing the good, the enriching the mind actively. Anyway, the beginning of wisdom. So this is the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. At first, while the passions are strong and liable to carry us away, we are governed and kept in order mainly by the fear of God, together with shame and repentance for past sin. These motives lead gradually to the building up of self-control and patience under temptations and difficulties. This, in turn, kindles hope. Drawn on by hope and guided by a growing experience, we set to work not merely to control, but to eradicate the passions. It is a lengthy process, but gradually the bodily appetites are weakened and the soul purged until at last we have arrived at purity of heart or freedom from passion. And that was another moment where I was like, that's like what I'm trying to describe by how, I don't know, by the most ready to hand example is just like when you quit your phone, say you get a flip phone and you just throw your smartphone in the trash, 3 weeks later, you are going to have a completely different mind. You're going to remember more dreams. You're going to think more. You're just going to think differently. I don't know how to describe it. You just have different thoughts. You have different impulses. You have gradually weakened that bodily appetite to be distracted all the time, to be seeking novelty all the time, to be atrophying your mind. All right. This does not mean that we cease to have any feelings. It means we are no longer ruled by our feelings, but remain untroubled and tranquil in all circumstances. The heart, or will, no longer swayed by emotions or carried away by its own self-will, is sober, awake, and attentive to God. So that paragraph was on the first thing about fasting from what is evil, a purgation of what is evil. And now, on the positive side, the cultivation of what is good. As we purge ourselves of passion, we also grow in virtue. The seeds of all the virtues are latent in us from the start. It is they which constitute the likeness of God in the soul, which sin has defaced but not destroyed. We must set to work methodically to cultivate them, until at last, by constant practice, they become easy and congenial to use. As passion weakens, virtue grows, and at length the heart which is pure from all passion is also adorned with all the virtues, or rather, at this stage, the separate virtues are united and summed up in the all-sufficient virtue of love. Love toward God and love of our neighbor for the sake of God becomes the ruling power in the heart. From scriptural study and from long experience, the Desert Fathers built up an unsurpassed body of moral teaching. They classified and analyzed the various types of sin and of virtue. They found out effective ways of mortifying the one and strengthening the other. All subsequent Christian teaching on these matters is under their influence. And to connect this to an example I've brought up again and again, my friend memorizing the poetry, reading every day, it's changing his mind, it's strengthening him, and it's increasing, in a certain way, in his specific example, increasing his capacity for virtue in a certain way. Because we really, when we are being atrophied in all these ways and controlled by this architecture of domination that is psychologically waging war on us, it is, in this sense, it's an architecture of sin. It is damaging who we are and how we relate to other people. It's hurting us, and it's hurting social relations in general. All right, so here's the other aspect that you can consider the way to that ultimate goal under. That was all one. This is another. Parallel with moral discipline, helping it on and helped on by it, runs the discipline of the mind, i.e. of the senses, the imagination, and the intellect. Here, too, there is a negative and positive side. I don't know if anyone who's been watching the show for a while is hearing this and having the response that I had when I was reading it, but I was just like, damn. So yeah, thanks a ton to Phoebe for printing me this book. I don't even know if she read this far, but I was like, damn. Okay, so yeah, parallel with the moral discipline, helping it on and helped on by it, runs the discipline of the mind, i.e. of the senses, the imagination, and the intellect. Here, too, there is a negative and a positive side. The senses, the memory, and the imagination must be guarded, not only against things which are a direct temptation to sin, but against everything which may engage the mind in passing interests when it should be bent upon the unseen realities. The intellect, too, must be called off from all vain curiosity, from all learning or enquiry pursued merely for its own sake. And then in the positive side, instead, we must teach ourselves to see God in all things and all things in God. This is done by stages. First, we learn how to contemplate material things and the face of nature. We come to see these things with the eyes of the psalmist, the authors of the Psalms, to whom they all declare the glory of God. Then we can rise to contemplate the glory of God in immaterial things, especially in the human soul, which bears his image and likeness. Next, we go on to contemplate God's actions in history, his judgments and his saving acts, and the whole economy or dispensation of our redemption. The mind becomes penetrated with the meaning of these things, so that whatever we see or hear speaks to us of them. In time, a great simplification takes place. Instead of contemplating all these things separately and in detail, we come to see them all as summed up in Christ, from whom are all things, and in whom is fulfilled the whole counsel of God toward us. When the heart becomes pure and love reigns in it, then also the contemplation of Christ becomes habitual in the mind. The soul has become Christ-centered. That makes me think of the Shaker hymn, "It's a gift to be simple, it's a gift to be pure." I don't know the rest of the words. Someone in the comments probably does. But it puts a new light on that hymn too, where it's like, it's not, you don't start there and think, I'm going to become simple. Like, that's not how it works. You have to like build up to a type of simplicity. Anyway, There is a stage beyond this. However the imagination and the intellect may be disciplined, we cannot truly apprehend God while we cling to visible things and let our minds dwell upon images of such things. Even Christ himself, who is the heart and center of the visible universe, is not truly known if we stop short at his human nature, not recognizing in him the eternal Word, the second person of the Blessed Trinity. A time must come when the mind turns from all objects of sense and clears itself of imagery. The eye of the body and the imagination being then shut, the inward eye of the spirit is opened. The soul, recollected and concentrated within herself, can see herself for what she is and rise above herself to the vision of God, whose image and likeness she bears. That has so much relevance now, because again, these topics are being discussed thousands of years ago, and now we are now image takes on a whole entire new meaning as of like 150 years ago. All right. There is a supreme mode of contemplation indeed, in which the soul, seized and uplifted by God, forgets all created things, including herself, being involved, so far as they are concerned, in an infinite ignorance. But this ignorance of creatures is at the same time a luminous knowledge of God, a formless contemplation of him who is without form or mode. The soul which has enjoyed this high contemplation has reached the summit of knowledge and wisdom. She has attained to the kingdom of God. Even when not engaged in actual contemplation, such a soul is permanently settled on God and lives in the light of a perpetual awareness of him, accompanied by an abiding joy. All right, now the third aspect of understanding the way. Officially, the fathers recognize only two ways, the moral and the contemplative, but in fact, they also show us a third way running parallel with these two. It is the way of prayer. I actually am not sure what book this is. Is this Timothy? Tim? Is that a book in the Bible? Don't know. In 1 Tim 2:1, we are bidden to practice petitions, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings. The fathers take this as a progressive series marking out the road of prayer. Petitions are confessions of sin and prayers for pardon and restoration, and the prayer of beginners is dominated by these. In them, the fear of God finds voice. Prayers are taken to mean requests for the virtues and graces, and acts of self-dedication and renunciation of the world. These are expressions of hope. They are characteristics of the soul which is beginning to be led forward in the paths of righteousness. As time goes on, this soul will begin to spare more time, in charity, to intercede for others. By the time that purity of heart is attained, even intercession will have been transcended, and the prayer of the pure soul will be predominantly thanksgiving and adoration. Of course, it is not meant that the soul, in passing from one form of prayer to another, leaves the old one behind and ceases to practice it. No one can outgrow penitence. And the earliest and lowliest of all prayers, the prayer of the publican, will accompany the soul to the very end of her journey, nor can she ever cease to make requests for herself and for others. It is a question of where the emphasis lies, and the pure heart, which lives in the contemplation of Christ, cannot live predominantly in fear and shame. It is ruled by thankfulness and love. Prayer and contemplation are closely joined together, and as in contemplation, so in prayer, a time comes when we must rise above the colorful imagination and the busy intellect and approach God in pure prayer. By this is meant a kind of prayer in which the mind does not run from image to image, or from one consideration to another, nor work out its prayer in a coherent texture of words, but stand still in unmoving attachment to God. The various elements of prayer, penitence, supplication, intercession, thanksgiving, adoration, etc., are not separately expressed in successive sentences. They are all present at once in the unity of this prayer. The soul may use a few pregnant words which say much in little, i.e., in modern Western terminology, an aspiration, or the prayer may be wordless altogether, i.e., what in modern Western terminology is called the prayer of simplicity or prayer of faith. The Fathers class all such types of prayer together under the name of pure prayer or quietness. In the pure heart, such prayer becomes habitual, and so fulfills the apostolic command to pray without ceasing. Such a soul may also be visited by moments of burning prayer or infused prayer, as modern writers would say. These are a gift which God gives when it pleases him. But the abiding state of the pure soul is one in which pure love, habitual contemplation, and perpetual prayer are all united. For though the three ways are distinct all along their courses, they become one and the same when they reach their common goal. Pure contemplation is inseparable from perfect love, and this pours itself out in pure prayer. I'm reading the rest of this because it is interesting and inspiring, but the earlier parts are, more where I think most people watching the stream, and certainly I am, where it's like, because we're not even, they were doing this work in the desert. We're not remotely in the desert. We're receiving so many chaotic images. We're a mess internally and externally. So, all right, yeah. But yeah, I was like, oh my God, that is just like so relevant. Incredible. All right, well, oh yeah, it's a gift to be simple. It's a gift to be pure. It's a gift to be free. It's a gift to be simple. It's the gift to be free. 'Tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. Ain't that the truth? Okay, well, okay, so yeah. Oh yeah, so my friend who made me that book didn't even read that much of it, so that's crazy. Like, really, sometimes things are just put right where you need them. All right, so I appreciate everybody for checking out the stream. If you've got any friends who might be into this kind of thing, please share it. I will pretty soon I'll have some videos that are like shorter and more shareable, because I know you can't, like, no one wants to receive a link to a video that's over an hour and be asked to watch it. So hopefully I can trim some things down that are more interesting. If there's anything that you liked or found interesting or remember, leave a comment and I will keep it in mind, because what strikes me might not strike other people, and I would like to have some feedback basically on the sorts of things I should be clipping. All right, so yeah, all right, thanks for watching and have a great night, and see you tomorrow at 9, but I will not be doing a show Thursday or Friday or Wednesday as usual. I'm out of town, so see you tomorrow at 9, and then I'll see you Monday next week. All right, have a good night.